One of the most common questions that I get asked when I work with salespeople or when I do a ride-along is, how do I know who is good and how can I get better at sales? I'm Scott Sylvan Bell. I'm coming to you live from Sacramento, California on a perfect day to talk about sales on video number 1,700 here on my YouTube channel. So I figured I would go into some detail about what is the difference between a great salesperson, a mediocre salesperson, and somebody who should not even be in sales. If you're like most salespeople, you have that question of, where do I stack up against other salespeople, against the population? So I figured the easiest way to explain this to you would be using the Pareto Principle. Now, this was developed by Vilfredo Pareto, who was an Italian economist, and he said that if you have a group of people and it equals 100%, 20% of that group is going to be the source of 80% of the output. And I'm going to let you know that for the most part, this is true when it comes to sales. And when you're thinking, hey Scott, I've got competition in the world of sales, I'm going to tell you, no you don't, okay? So let's break down this whole series for you. So you got a group of 100% of the salespeople. You got 100 salespeople in the room. I'm going to let you know that 80 of them are really mediocre. 80 of them are like, well, they can make some sales, and when it comes down to it, they can price match and they can discount. But the pool of 20 that's right here is really the group of salespeople that you should aim to be in if you're over here in this 80% group. Now, you're like, well, can this break down even further? And I'm going to say absolutely. So in the pool of 80 salespeople that are sitting in the room, 64 of them should not even be in sales. There's whiners, they're crybabies. They are the person who ruin your sales meetings when you're like, oh my goodness, just please make the bad man stop, have him sit down, give the guy a pacifier, whatever it takes to make that salesperson quiet. So 64 of them are the people who need to just go away and get out of the world of sales. They're the greenhorns. They're the people who are never going to make it. And unfortunately, most companies spend a ton of money, a ton of effort, and a ton of time trying to develop this person or group. Now, out of the 80, 16 of them have the potential of being a fantastic salesperson if they're given the right coaching, if they're given the right training. So 16 of this group, they may make it with the right amount of work, with the right amount of training, with the right amount of effort. 64 of them are horrible. These are the guys or the girls that you're up against that they give everything away, they don't know how to defend price, they don't know how to defend value, and overall, they are not good salespeople. So you're saying, hey Scott, how do we figure out, using the Pareto Principle, how good salespeople stack up? Now you may be asking, where do I stack up in this pool of 100 salespeople? And this is the way that it breaks down. 80 people out of that 100, they're at some point going to cycle out of sales. They're not going to make the money, they can't close deals, it just doesn't work out for them. It's not a long-term strategy. They can stay in for a few years, they can stay in for a few months, but long-term it's just not there for them. So let's talk about the 20 people in the pool that is probably going to make up where you're at. Now, 16 of the 20 are good. They're good salespeople. They're hard workers. They want to close deals. They do close deals. They outperform people in the pool of 80. They're good. 4 of the people out of the 20 are great. Okay? 4 of those people are great. They are the closers. They are the workhorses. They are fantastic at what they do. And if anybody's in this pool of 20, there is no way to knock this group of people. But out of those 4, 0.8 or 1 is going to be the performer. That is the top dog. That is the guy or the girl that can just walk into anything and close a sale. That is the myth. That is the legend. That is the person that everybody wants to be in sales. Fantastic that somebody's a closer. Once again, I'm not knocking that. That takes skill, that takes effort, that takes training, that takes role play, that takes sticking in the sale, that means asking for the business. But 0.8 or 1 person out of that group is going to be the performer. They are going to be the top dog, and once again, the person that everybody wants to emulate. A quick breakdown of this pool of 100 people would be this. 64 out of the 100 are horrible. They're not going to stay in sales. They're not going to be in sales. They're the greenhorns that ask the questions that never matter. They could ask you something that only happens on a day with a full moon that you stub your toe and it's a Wednesday. Of that next session, the group, 16 of them are learning. They are people who are coachable. They just need good trainers. They need good mentors. They need to come in for role play. They need a few good books, some good podcasts, some YouTube videos, things that help them out. Now, 16 of those people are good. They are closers. They can get some sales done. And of that, 4 of them are the exceptional closers that everybody looks up to. They're great people. They know how to close deals. And then of that, 0.8 or 1 is the performer. The person who is the top at what they do. It's the person who's in the magazines. It's the person who gets all the big giant trophies and the watches. That is the performer. So you're thinking like, Scott, what are the characteristics? Where do I stack up? That is what we're going to go through next. So these are the traits that I've seen from the people who are the bottom 64. Now this is not an exhaustive list. This isn't the end-all be-all. There's a few things that could be added. There's a few things that could be modified. But these are things that I've seen from working with salespeople every single day. So the first off is the people in this bottom 64 tend to focus solely on price. They get caught up in price. That's all they talk about. That's what they worry about. They're price matchers. They're discounters. This is what is most of your competition when it comes down to sales. You got people who are price matchers and discounters and probably will not be in the game for very long. They take forever. They have a long windup. They never get to the point. And the reason is because they don't have a game plan, they don't have closing questions, and they are full-on scared of rejection. They give massive discounts. And this is why when you go into a sales call and you sit down and you're talking to somebody and they're like, hey, we're talking to other people, we're getting 3 bids, whatever it is in your industry, whatever way that it works, you're like, where did somebody find this price? How did somebody come up with this? They were probably talking to somebody who's in this bottom 64 and they're spoiling the game for the rest of the salespeople. Now, once again, they probably won't be in for long, so they need to make some quick money. So they're willing to take a few bucks and they're willing to cause problems for you as the other salesperson because they think like, well, everybody's shopping on price. Isn't that what they do? Well, I mean, they can, but I mean, this is their sole focus. They get caught up in price. They don't close. They don't ask questions. For the most part, they are not coachable. They do not want to be trained. They'll sit down with a trainer. The trainer will say this, do this. And they go, you know what? I want my own freaking program. My friends in the military call that OFP. I want my own freaking program. I want to do it my way. You know, the way that you're showing me isn't comfortable for me, so I'm not going to do it. And then so what happens is they eat up tons of resources and then they don't implement anything that they learn. So as I shared with you earlier, this bottom 64 are responsible for wasting a lot of time of management. They're responsible for not doing their job, and they cause the rest of the sales world a problem because they are solely focused on price. Now, if this is you and you're watching this video, first off, I want to congratulate you for wanting to be better. What you should be looking at is to get to the group of the next 16. Now, these are the traits of the first group of 16. These are the salespeople who have capability, are willing to learn, are willing to be coached, and have the capability of moving up in the process. But here's what they typically do in a sales call. They live and die on rapport. This is their idea of what they have to do to make a sale. They go in and I'm going to build a ton of rapport. Oh, you like football? I like football. You like cars? I like cars. You like cats? I like cats. And it just seems like this conversation drags on for forever. As a sales trainer or as a manager watching this, it becomes very long-winded. Now, this group of people typically have some sort of game plan. They typically have something that they're willing to try, but they don't always stick to it. So they kind of make sales, they kind of close deals. They have peaks and valleys. They're like a good dollar deal, low dollar deal, good dollar deal, low dollar deal. And this is what happens. And somewhat they are focused on price, but they use a lot of discounts to close. They do have some fear of rejection, and they are coachable, but there's some hesitation. There's not a lot of trust. Like, I'm not comfortable with the sales process. It's clunky, it's chunky. I don't know if this is exactly what I want to do for the rest of my life. To an essence, they're a weak implementer. They do implement, but not enough and not fast enough. So if you're in this group, I'm going to say the speed of implementation that you have and the more trust that you can have for a coach or a mentor or somebody who's helping you out, the faster it's going to be for you to learn. you do need management, you do need training, you do need coaching. So if you're a manager and you're watching this, you're like, I'm thinking of my sales guy, that one right there. This sounds a lot like him. I will let you know there is hope, there is capability. Keep working with the person, put them on a schedule. If you're this guy, stay on a schedule, ask for help, keep a journal. You're going to be okay. Things will get better. It seems like you're struggling. You know, being in sales is a lot like being in the ocean. If you've ever been in big waves, like if you're out there paddling out, you look around and the waves are up over your head. You're like, oh my goodness, where am I at? I can't see the shore. I don't know which way was front, don't know which way's back. And then the next thing you know, you're riding on top of the crest going in towards the sand and into the beach. And you're like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. Well, the same thing happens with sales. You get swallowed up in the sales process. Things don't seem like they're closing. You put in a bunch of work, you put in a bunch of effort, and then you close some deals. And then you're like, oh, okay, this is great. I've got it all figured out, but you don't have it all figured out. So once again, you get caught up in between everything that's going on, that you get the huge peaks and valleys. Someone who's been around sales long enough gets used to these cycles. And instead of them being really tall and really deep, they're really narrow. They're down here. It's really steady. So if you're in this group, if you're in this first group of 16, there is hope for you. Stick in the game, stay in the game, learn how to not be a discounter, learn how to not sell on price. Everything's going to be all right. So we are getting close to the closers. We are in the second group of 16. And I'll let you know that from working with these people, they're on their way to being a closer. They just need some work. They need some effort. They need some coaching. They need some training. They need some mentoring. But you're going to find that for the most part, rapport is natural. They've been asked all the tough questions. They've been through all the weird sales challenges. They've talked to enough people from all over that things just happen. They just pop. It's not really that big of a deal. Their sales process is very conversational. It's not chunky at all. It doesn't seem weird. It doesn't seem unusual. It seems like they're just talking to somebody having a root beer or having a beer at the bar. It's just super conversational. I will let you know that the people in the second group of 16 tend to stick to some sort of game plan. They've been around long enough that they need to know that they need to have a sales process, and they stick to it. They're consistent. They tell the same story all over and over and over again. They ask the same questions over and over again. They go for the close. They ask closing questions. They look for the pain, the pleasure, or the risk of the buyer. They talk about the budget somewhere early on in the sales call, and they don't leave it for the end, and they get a commitment from the buyer that they're going to do something, and then at the end, they hold them to it. Now, somebody who's been in sales long enough is past the form of rejection. Yes, it's still bothersome, but salespeople know that there's always another deal. They're going to do everything they can to close the deal, but they also know that there's a point where some people aren't your buyer. They don't chase the wrong people. They don't go after people who are not meant to do business with them. They're coachable. When they sit down with a coach, a mentor, or a trainer, they do what they're taught. They may push against it. They may not like it. They may ask questions, but most of the time, they're coachable. They go out and they implement what they learn. Now, I will let you know, when it comes down to it, that first pool of 80 people in the sales world, they need management. They need somebody setting their schedule. They need babysitting. They need somebody to tell them what to do. This group of the second 16 typically don't need that. You may have one or two guys or girls in there who need that coaching, who need that training of like, here's what you need to do to be a salesperson. But this person's typically been in the game long enough that everything's okay. Because remember, they're in that 20% of people who do 80% of the deals. Now, I will let you know that when it comes to this pool of the 20% who close, they like to push boundaries. They like to go, the rules are not for me. They're for the guys over here who can't close. And they push boundaries. And they may go to the office, they may complain, they may say stuff, they may do stuff. And owners and managers, they're like, oh my goodness, I don't know what to do with this guy or this girl, but they close deals, okay? So I'm not giving you permission to push boundaries. I'm not telling you that's what you should do, but I will say it's normal when people start hitting this pool of the top 20% of salespeople. They can be a little bit more difficult to deal with because they know that they can go out and close sales. And you know what? When it comes down to it, there's not a huge pool of people who can close a lot of deals. There's just not. If 20% of people sell 80% of the jobs, which is the way the math plays out almost everywhere that I looked, then you know what? That salesperson knows that they're the prize. Anybody who's in the top 20% knows that they could go get a job anywhere else. They can look around and be like, hey, you got a sales job? Hire me. right? And the person goes, well, yeah, sell? Yeah, I do. And if you don't think that I can, I'm going to go to your competitor. Like, let's get you hired, okay? So I will give you that there is this one thing that is not on this list right here, and that is the person who's in the top 20% tends to push boundaries to their favor, all right? So let's get to the top 4% of salespeople. Here we go. The top 3.2 or 4% are truly the closers when it comes to sales. This is the guy or the girl that has no problem selling anything. For them, rapport is natural. They just look around, they can talk to anybody, doesn't matter where the person's from, doesn't matter what they do. They don't really prejudge. They know that, hey, look, you know what? I have enough skill and I have enough talent. I can do this. I can do my job. So they're super conversational. It does not seem like this person's selling. And so somebody who's back behind them, somebody who's like in that 80%, they'll look at a conversational salesperson, they're going, I do everything that that guy does, or I do everything that that girl does, but they don't realize that the person who's in this top 4% is polished. They've told the story thousands of times. They've asked the question thousands of times. It just feels like there's a conversation. There's no real form of pressure. It doesn't seem like it. There might be in the end in the closing process, but when it comes to a sales call, the people look around and are like, hey, I really like this guy or this girl. It just seems like they're just talking to me. And that's because this salesperson follows a game plan. They figure out what they're going to say. They figure out what they're going to do. They've got their training in. And I'm going to let you know, of all the people who call me and say, hey, Scott, I want help and I want to make sure that I stay on top, the most common phone call that I get is from this top 4%. From the closers and the performers who say, let's go over sales basic mastery. Let's go over the questions. Let's go over the standard objections. They have a game plan and they follow it. They focus on pain, pleasure, or risk, budget, and commitment. They know that those are the keys to make the sale. And for them, closing's intuitive. It's not weird or unusual. They've done it enough that they have timing down, that they know when to say something, they know when to be quiet, they know when to pause. These are all things that you learn in the sales process. It doesn't happen in a day. Learning how to be a closer is not always instant. I will let you know, I have met a few people who naturally have the gift of sales, but it does not happen that often. Most of the people in this group had to work and fight for it. For them, rejection's normal, right? It's not really that big of a deal. They'll go 10 questions deep into a close, like it's not that big of a deal. They're like, hey, pass the salt, so do you want to get this done tomorrow, right? It's not really weird or unusual. They ask for coaching when they need it. They will be the first person to get on the phone. The people who are in the 80% pool way down there, they are scared to get on the phone because they don't want to be judged by the manager, by the trainer, by the coach. But the person who's in the top 4% that's a closer, they've got no problem jumping on the phone saying, hey, I need some help. They implement quickly. They take a look. They're like, I know I can make this work. I know I can make this work. I'm going to implement it. And then they manage themselves. Very rarely have I been in an organization or have I been around a salesperson who's in the top 4% that can't manage themselves. They're on top of their time. They know what needs to be done. They may not be very good with paperwork. Okay, I will tell you this. They may not be very good with paperwork, and they may need some management when it comes to turning things in. But when it comes to going out and closing a deal, they don't need help. They don't need hand-holding. These people are fantastic at what they do, but I will tell you, they are looking up the hill. They're looking up the hill at the king or the queen, and that is going to be the performer. Last on the list is the performer. This is the guy or the girl that is the king or the queen of the industry that has the capability to sell just about anything to anyone. You may hear that this guy or girl can sell ketchup to a woman in popsicle gloves, or they can sell ice to an Eskimo. This is the person that sort of has a gift for gab and closes everything. You look at them, you're like, how did you make that happen? Well, because when it comes down to it, they've been through enough sales calls that for them, rapport is natural. They know how to build rapport with anybody about anything. They know how to have great conversations. You know, for the people who are behind them, they're conversational. They know how to have the conversation, but it's not a great conversation. I will tell you that the performer has a strict game plan. They know that not everybody is their buyer. They know that not everybody should be doing business with them, and they know when to walk away. Now, I will tell you that salespeople back behind them are more willing to walk away. This performer knows when somebody is or isn't their client for the most part. They focus on the pain, pleasure, or risk of the buyer, the budget, and the commitment. They're not afraid to talk about anything. They will hold a buyer to their commitment. They will all day long say, hey, you know, we talked about this earlier. Earlier you told me, earlier you said, whatever way that it comes out. And for them, closing is just natural. They've been through enough sales processes that everything just feels natural. And their vocal pitch is there, their tone is there, their pace is there. They know when to pause, they know when to make a statement, they know when to ask a question, and closing just happens. And it just seems like someone is like, here, take my money, here, have my firstborn kid, right? And as a salesperson, you look at them like, what just happened? How did they close that deal? There is no fear of rejection. They will walk into 100 objections in a row, and they will still close the deal. Now, I will let you know something very interesting about the performer. They demand coaching. It's not that they just say, hey, once or twice, let's get you on the phone. They go, no, let's put this on the calendar. I want to make sure that I'm being coached properly. I want to make sure that every month that I'm talking to whoever it is for an hour, or every other week I'm talking to them for an hour. And they know that once they hit a sales slump, they need to get on the phone, and whatever it is that they got to get out of their way, they have a good head game when it comes to dealing with rejection, objections, and problems. And they implement quickly. They take the time to do what they need to do to close the deals, and you know, they take a look and they go, hey, this is going to work for me, and they make it happen. So there you go. Video for me, number 1,700 on this YouTube channel. Once again, this isn't the end-all, be-all list. There are some areas that cross over, but for you to get to that 1%, there is a lot of work, but I believe you can do it. Now, if you could do a small favor for me, in the box down below, leave a comment, question, or story. That'd be fantastic. To the right, to the left, there is a subscribe button. You know what you got to do. You got to subscribe. And then last of all, you can send it out to all your friends via StumbleUpon, Facebook, Twitter, Google+. Why not even LinkedIn? Scott Sylvan Bell. We'll see you soon. Thanks for watching. Aloha.